My name's Chris Warner, and today we're going to be demonstrating gesture drawing here in the Life Drawing Studio. Gesture drawing is essentially summing up the figure in totality in a holistic way in the first few moments of the drawing. So typically a gesture drawing might only be 2 or 3 minutes at most. And the idea is to convey the action, the movement, and the attitude of the figure. I'm going to sort of break down the process. What we do very quickly in the gesture, I'm going to sort of try to break it down bit by bit here. Shirley's going to give us a pose here. It's a classic pose. We call it the contrapposto pose, which means all of her weight is on one foot. On her left foot, it's on our right-hand side, of course. And what that means is it's raising her pelvis on that side higher, and her shoulder is dropping to meet it. So there is a kind of compression on her weight-bearing side. This is the dynamic, if you will, that we want to try to capture in our gesture. So I'm going to start the drawing, as we've talked about, with a mark that simply indicates the top of the composition but doesn't define the scale of the head yet. And then I'm going to try to find a mark that flows all the way to the bottom of my composition. And I'm already putting in something I'm going to call a vertical reference mark, which has to be parallel to the vertical edge of the paper. But next step will be to take that total length and divide it in half. And so we've got the axis of her shoulders and the axis of her hips. What do I mean by axis line? An axis is simply a line between two common parts or points across her figure. And I established it by literally putting my pencil across her shoulders and transferring that angle or that direction to my drawing. You'll notice that those marks are nice and wide. The body will be something less than that. And then I'm going to come down and make the same analysis of the tip or tilt of her hips, which I see as being that's the axis of her hips. And now, knowing this axis of her shoulders determines that her sternum is going to be at a right angle to that, and that's going to be the major axis of her rib cage. So as I begin to gesture in that egg for her rib cage, that's the orientation of it. Very, very important. And then I'm going to try and honor the axis of her hips and draw a bowl form that is the simplified description of her pelvis. And the bowl is meant to tip or spill forward, if you will, owing to the structure of the pelvis and the spinal column and back. I want to wrap her rib cage a little bit, maybe indicate a little bit of her thoracic arch, and also I want to indicate if I see any indication of one side or the other. You notice here I came and found the near corner of her hip because I'm catching just a little bit of that depth dimension on that side. In this case, I'm catching just a little bit on this side, so I'll bring that indication of a near corner in there. I'm going to allow her neck to drop well below her shoulders into and near her clavicles, okay? Sternum. I'm going to look for her linea alba, or her white line, which is her center line. And again, the costume is very helpful here. It's indicating that it's moving in this direction, isn't it? Okay, so we're sternum through the navel, about here, down to the pubic symphysis. The head or skull raised up on that lovely neck, and then it's a blocked form. And what you'll typically find in a contrapposto pose is everything else having various angles of change. The head itself is very erect and straight. Just a center line and a horizontal mark that might indicate, just the position of the features, just a little bit. Very generic, of course. Nothing too dark and nothing with any sort of concern for detail. So what we've done so far is we've drawn her rib cage, her pelvis, and her skull. And those are the three great structures of the upper half. And we know from the canons of proportion of the human skeleton that from the top of the head to the bottom of the foot, if you divide the skeleton in half, you'll find the pubic symphysis, and that, of course, is parallel to the great trochanters of the femur, which are slightly broader than the lip of this bowl. Okay, so they're going to flow out just a little wider. Now we're going to check up on our leg length by simply multiplying this length times 2. And what I'm finding is actually my legs need to be just slightly shortened from my initial assumption there. Now the next thing is to find the position of that weight-bearing foot relative to her head. And when I do that, it comes right through this eye. So I'm coming from this eye straight on down. And it's landing me here. And that's going to be the position of that weight-bearing foot, which I will now sketch just very lightly. Inner ankle, outer ankle, and a little arc here between the two. And then an indication of her large toe should just about do the trick. Halfway from here, I'll pull a line out of her great trochanter or pubic symphysis. That's that halfway mark, right? And I'll pull that down to the bottom and divide that in half, okay, to find the position of her knee. So rib cage, pelvis, skull, weight-bearing foot. Notice I didn't draw the knee on my way down. And now I come and find the position of the knee. And this is just, in terms of efficiency, you're not going to be redrawing and resketching the leg length and having to resketch the knee every time. You'll get it, pretty close right on the first time. Now what we know about the tibia, her shin bone, as you can see, has a nice flow from the center of her knee to the inside ankle. So we'll invest the leg, the skeletal analogy with that flow right off the bat. Very, very important that it has that swing to it. Now we can draw with some freedom and describe the position of the off-weight leg. I'm using an angle sight between toe and heel here to position that. Coming down, finding that knee halfway. Notice that this is a little bit lower. When I angle sight between both knees, sure enough, this knee is just a little bit lower as well. Now, I have a profile view of that tibia, which yields a straighter angle, a straighter line than this nice curve that I'm going to catch here. Okay, now the arms and hands are last in our process. That's because of their relative weight being light, so they don't really affect the dynamic of the pose as like the other heavier elements do. So we're going to lay those in after everything else is in place, looking for the hand here, a little indication of her thumb, and maybe just a mitten form, if you will, for that hand. Nothing detailed at all. You might remember to draw that hand a little bigger than you think it needs to be, because typically we want to make those things too small. I'll come down and draw this hand in isolation. Its position relative to her pelvis and so on, a little indication of her thumb, and then pull it back up, find that elbow, help make this analysis from elbow to elbow just to make sure, and so on. So this just quickly is the step-by-step process. Now what I think I can do is a quick gesture, what I would normally do for my own kind of drawing in a situation like this, based on that method. Oh, I broke my rule, didn't I? I put that knee in too early. Well, it turns out in drawing these rules are made to be broken, but I think it's really important to have a method, to have a sequential step-by-step approach to things. So I hope this has helped you to understand a little bit about the gesture and how important it is. These more finished drawings, which are beautiful in their completeness and in their detail, rely so importantly and so completely on that initial summation that happens in the gesture phase. The first 3 minutes of the drawing are so important in order to capture the action, the movement, and the attitude of your model.